If you are pulled over for a traffic stop and you happen to be carrying, this is a dangerous situation if you are not prepared. What should you say? What should you do? Should you tell the cop you are carrying, or should you just keep your mouth closed? What can you do to make sure you don't get in a standoff with the police so that you can drive away and be on your way down the road? In this video, I am covering 5 tips if you are concealed carrying during a traffic stop, and if you wait around till the end of this video, we'll actually talk about whether or not concealed carrying with a permit in your vehicle is really worth it. Tip number 1, you must know your state laws for carrying during a traffic stop. If you have a concealed carry license, you must know your state laws as to whether or not you have a duty to disclose to the officer you are carrying. In the following states, you have a duty to inform an officer that you have a firearm on you if you have a concealed carry permit. In the states of Alaska, Arkansas, California, DC, Louisiana, Maine, Michigan, Nebraska, North Carolina, North Dakota, Ohio, South Carolina, Texas, and Hawaii County in Hawaii, all of these states require you must have a duty, and you do have a duty to disclose if you are carrying a firearm and you have a valid permit. In fact, if you do not inform them that you do have a firearm on you and they find out about it, you can guarantee that they will cite you for it. However, you do not have a duty to inform the officer anything if you have a concealed carry permit and you do not have a firearm on you. But what if you're the passenger instead of the driver? There is a gray area in the law for most states when it comes to passengers. In fact, some of these state laws are written so strange. They will say that even though you're not the driver and you are merely the passenger, under the law, even if the vehicle is stopped, let's say the driver is pulled over, they still deem you to have been stopped under the law, and some of these states still require you to have a duty to disclose to that officer if you have a concealed carry permit and you're carrying your firearm. So be careful here. I usually advise people to inform the officer if you're a passenger. But what if you'd rather fib and not tell the officer you're carrying? In many states, if you are a concealed carry license holder, you are committing a crime if you choose to lie to the police officer. In other words, if the cop asks you, you must inform them. But what if you are not required to notify in your state and you're a concealed carry license holder? Should you still tell the officer? Consider this. Most cops are going to run your license plates. And here's the deal. Concealed carry license permits are tied to the Department of Motor Vehicles, so the cops are likely going to know if you have a concealed carry license, whether you tell them or not. And if you choose not to disclose to the officer that you have a weapon, then many times what will happen is the cops will think you're being a little shady, and now they're going to treat you differently than they would under a normal traffic stop. In fact, I have seen cops decide they are more suspicious of you now, and maybe now they're going to just decide to write you that ticket when they weren't really planning to do so because you failed to disclose. So how should you deal with the cop when he approaches you if you have a concealed carry license? Here's what I say you do. You should keep your driver's license and your concealed carry permit together. Keep them stored together so that when you roll down your window some, you can hand that to him along with your proof of insurance and valid registration. But wait, what if you choose not to disclose this information and now the cop asks you to step out of the vehicle? Do you have to get out of the vehicle? Unfortunately, yes, you do. You should get out of the vehicle very slowly, and you should notify the officer that you are carrying, whether or not you have a duty to disclose or not. Because think about this. Once he's getting you out of the vehicle, he is going to search you and likely your vehicle, and you don't want him to overreact when he finds a gun that you didn't tell him about. A client once asked me though, they said, "Can't I just tell the cop I've got a gun on me?" Whatever you do, do not say, "Hey, I've got a gun." Instead, calmly inform him that you have a concealed carry license and that you are carrying today. Then ask the officer what he would like you to do. Now, we've talked about your options if you are a concealed carry license holder, but what if you are not a concealed carry license holder and you're pulled over for a traffic stop and you have a firearm in your vehicle? What should you do? You have all the same constitutional rights that anyone else would have during a normal traffic stop. You must still provide your driver's license and proof of insurance, but by no means are you required to tell the officer at all that you have a firearm. You have a right to remain silent, and the only way that that officer is going to be able to get into your car to perform a search is if you either give him consent or if he has independent probable cause that a different crime is taking place. If you don't say much and you keep your mouth closed and you only committed a traffic violation, there's a very good chance you're going to be on your way pretty quickly. However, if the police officer claims you must still get out of the car and exit that vehicle, you must comply. Why? Because under Pennsylvania versus Mims, the Supreme Court has ruled that a police officer can ask you to step out of your vehicle if they are able to articulate facts that objectively establishes that they were in fear for officer safety. And unfortunately, I see police officers cobble together certain facts and things that you say or your demeanor or your attitude, and they almost always find a reason to justify getting you out of the car for officer safety. The point I'm making is don't argue with the cops if they ask you to step out of the car. Just do it. But if they ask you to step out of the car, if you've got the weapon or the firearm on your body, make sure you tell the officer first and don't move. However, as long as the firearm is not on your body, you have no responsibility to say anything to the officer about the weapon being in the car. Tip number 2. Do not treat daytime carry the same as nighttime carry. A traffic stop at night is dangerous when you are carrying. Why? Because you don't want cops claiming they saw ghosts as they walk up to your window. The best way to avoid cops claiming they saw you doing something that you didn't really do is to make sure you turn on your dome light in your car and at all times keep your hands on the steering wheel. Why do I say that cops sometimes claim they see ghosts? Because many officers on a nighttime traffic stop, as they walk up to that window, if there's any movement going on, they're going to claim that they see sudden or furtive movements, and now they're concerned for their officer's safety, and things can get tense very quickly. In fact, this creates a very high tension situation where cops almost always demand that you get out of the car. By turning on your inside dome lights of your car, you help put the police officer at ease. Number 1, because he knows you're not trying to hide anything. And then number 2, as he walks up a little bit more relaxed, it puts you in a better position that he will likely confront you and send you on your way much quicker. In addition to turning on your dome lights, you should also consider turning off your engine. This may seem trivial, but in a nighttime traffic stop, one of the things to do is to make sure you put the police officer at ease as much as you possibly can so that it doesn't escalate the situation. And I want you to think about this for a minute. If a cop walks up and he sees that your dome lights go on and you turn the car off, number 1, he knows that you're not about to take off, so he doesn't have to worry about an evading arrest situation. He also knows because your dome lights are on, you're not trying to hide anything from him. So now in a relaxed situation, the officer is much likely to be overreactive to anything that you might say or do. The number 1 thing a police officer is afraid of in a nighttime traffic stop is him either getting shot or things getting out of hand. These simple techniques help the officer relax so that things go much smoother and better for you. Finally, one more point to think of if you're nighttime carrying in your vehicle. Many times maybe you want to go out and have a nice glass of wine or maybe something to drink at the bar or maybe at the restaurant. But if you're carrying and you're on your way home, be careful. Although it may be legal for you to carry in your car, it now becomes illegal and an arrestable offense. In fact, you could be arrested for unlawful carrying of a weapon if a police officer pulls you over and claims he smells the odor of an alcoholic beverage on your breath. If you end up in jail, now you're going to be charged with not only potentially a DWI, but also a gun charge. Tip number 3, don't argue with the cops. Arguing plus guns plus cops means you lose. That simple equation is what's really important here. Because here's why I'm saying this. We all know what the cop's going to say as soon as he walks up to your window. The first thing he's going to say is, "Do you know why I stopped you tonight?" We know that every officer is going to ask that question when they first pull us over and walk up to the window. So what's he really getting at? Why is the cop asking that question? It's not because he wants to really know if you know the answer to it. He's more trying to do an attitude check and figure out who he's dealing with. The simple answer you can give: no, officer, I don't know why you pulled me over, but I've got my driver's license, my concealed carry permit, and my proof of insurance. Then just hand it to him. What if the officer starts asking you a lot of other questions? Remember, you have a constitutional right to remain silent. You can simply say, "Officer, I exercise my right to remain silent." Now be aware, he may initially be a little confused. He may wonder what you're doing, and he may try to accuse you of playing games. But remember, it's really important. Don't argue. Don't be combative with the officer. Just exercise your rights and be polite and professional. If he continues to hold you on the side of the road for minutes at a time, you can always see if you're able to leave by asking, "Officer, am I free to leave?" This question is making it legally clear that you're not just voluntarily hanging around to talk to the officer, and you're also making it clear you wish to end this encounter. This question also protects your rights, because now if the police officer chooses to hold you longer than is reasonably necessary in order to complete the traffic stop, which let's say you were speeding, or let's say that you committed a traffic violation, if he holds you any longer than is necessary to write that ticket, then now that officer is dealing with an illegal traffic stop. However, if the cop tells you that you are free to leave, leave. If he says that you are not free to leave, exercise your right to remain silent and refuse to answer any questions unless your lawyer is present. If the officer asks you to get out of the car, just do it. Remember, under Pennsylvania versus Mims, if he's able to articulate that his officer's safety is at risk, then he's justified. And I can tell you right now, almost every court is going to say that if you have a weapon on you and you notify him as a concealed carry license holder that you actually have that firearm in your possession, he can use that as a basis to justify you to get out of the car. Speak calmly, be professional, and comply with your state laws. But if the police officer starts to take it too far with his questioning or his desire to search your vehicle, remember, you can always exercise your constitutional rights. Tip number 4, never grab for a gun around a cop. I know this sounds obvious, but if you are a concealed carry license holder and you have a duty to inform the officer that you have a gun, and you tell him you have your firearm, and if he asks you something like, "Okay, well, I need you to give me the gun," whatever you do, do not do that. You should at all times keep your hands on the steering wheel, keep your voice low, because here's the problem. You don't know the experience or the temperament of the primary officer or his backup. In fact, I have seen backup officers panic and escalate a situation into something very dangerous because they couldn't hear what the lead officer was saying to the driver. If for some reason the primary officer that walked up to your window asks you to hand him the gun, never assume that the backup officer who's going to be over on the passenger side acting in a position of backup, never assume that he's able to hear what the lead officer is saying at your window with all the road noise that's going on. In fact, what do you think is going to actually happen if that backup officer thinks that you are reaching for your gun and he didn't hear anything about the conversation with the primary officer? You could end up being shot and you could have a very tragic situation. If for some reason the cop asks you to give him the gun, my advice is that you tell him you want to remain safe. You can very calmly and politely tell him where the exact location of the gun is, and then allow the officer permission to reach in and grab for the weapon, and at all times, stay silent and do not move. Tip number 5, always move slowly during a concealed carry traffic stop. Now, what if you're a left-handed carry? If you're left-handed and you carry your weapon on the left side, think about what's going to happen as that police officer walks up to your window. If you go to reach for your wallet, there's a good chance he's going to see that you're carrying a weapon. Ideally, you should always carry in a way where the officer who walks up to your window is not able to see that you have a firearm. Otherwise, if you're going to reach for your wallet and you've got your firearm on your left side, you better make sure and fully disclose to the officer that you have that firearm. Whether you're in a state that has a duty to disclose or not, you better make sure and tell that officer you have that firearm. Otherwise, you could get into a very dangerous situation. What about your seatbelt? This is another situation where someone looks to unbuckle their seatbelt to reach for their wallet. I've seen officers overreact when they see somebody look to take off their seatbelt, so you've got to be very careful here as well. If you need to unbuckle your seatbelt in order to reach for your wallet and you happen to be carrying, whether it's on your left side or your right side, it's important that you tell the officer before you reach. Because otherwise, think about this. Not only do you have an officer on your left side on your window that may be able to see if you're carrying on your left side, but if you reach on the right side to grab for your wallet after taking off your seatbelt, what is that assist officer going to see? You could end up putting yourself in a very dangerous situation unless you tell the officer if that weapon is on your body. If you have to take off your seatbelt or reach for your wallet, always tell the officer first that you're a concealed carry license holder and that you're carrying today. Then inform the officer where the firearm is on your body. And before you make any movement, ask permission from the officer to be able to reach back and grab for your wallet, and let him know that's what you're doing while you do it. And whatever you do, move very, very slowly. What if you keep your proof of insurance and registration in your glove box or your center console? This presents another risk. And if you don't already have your driver's license and your insurance ready to hand to the officer, it's important that you don't just rush over and make quick movements towards your glove box or your center console. And you need to ask the officer and move very slowly before you reach to these areas. Otherwise, the primary lead officer or the assist officer could end up overreacting. This goes without saying, but never keep your firearm in the glove box like you see in the movies. And it's not a very good idea to keep it in the center console either. What do you think is going to happen if a police officer, whether it's the lead officer coming up to your window or an assist officer over on the passenger side, what do you think is going to happen if you reach over and you open that glove box and the first thing they see is a firearm? Things are going to get deadly very quickly. So, is concealed carrying with a license when you're driving your vehicle, is it really worth it? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. But for me in Texas, I'm not really sure that it is. Here's why. If I have a concealed carry license in Texas, I have a duty to disclose that I'm carrying to the officer. Now, that officer might treat everything just fine and no major issues, or it could escalate the situation, and now I'm putting myself in a tense spot where I have to disclose where the firearm is and potentially get into a conversation about that. However, in Texas, there's something known as the traveling presumption. And if I don't have a concealed carry license and I have a firearm in my car, it is presumed that I am transporting that weapon from one location to my home and that I'm traveling. It's what's called the traveling assumption or the traveling presumption. So I'm not required to say anything to the officer. And even if the officer were to locate that firearm, in order to try me or actually arrest me for unlawful carrying of a weapon, the officer would have to prove criminal intent that I was somehow doing something other than transporting that firearm from one location to the next. That's going to be really difficult for them to do when I exercise my constitutional rights. So, as long as my firearm is concealed, I have no duty to tell the officer anything. I have now avoided a potentially tense situation with a possibly aggressive police officer because I no longer have a duty to inform him of anything. But what if cops show up at my front door demanding to see my guns? Believe it or not, this has happened. Check out this next video where I break down 5 tips whenever cops want to see your guns. See you over there.